Welcome back to Grim and Whim. Today we will be looking into the strange disappearance of Paula Jean Welden, as well as the mystery of the Bennington Triangle. This infamous triangle is an area in southwestern Vermont where a number of people went missing between the years 1945 and 1950. People just disappeared without a trace, and this Bennington Triangle phenomenon is notably one of American history's strangest unsolved mysteries. So let's first get into Paula's story and then we'll tackle the mystery of the Bennington Triangle. Paula Jean Welden was born on October 19th, 1928, and she disappeared on December 1st, 1946, while walking on Vermont's Long Trail hiking route, which is in the vicinity of the Bennington Triangle. She was born originally in Stamford, Connecticut, and was the eldest of four daughters to William Welden, who was a pretty well-known and successful industrial engineer and architect, and her mother was named Jean Douglas. Not much is known about her early life, but she was unique in that she was attending college in the 1940s. In the United States, more women actually attain higher education in comparison to men nowadays, but this was not the case in the 1940s. It was typically a boys' club, and also you definitely had to be of means to be able to afford to go to college. In 1946, Paula was a sophomore at Bennington College in North Bennington, Vermont. On December 1st, 1946, Paula Jean Welden had just finished a double shift working in the dining hall of Bennington College. Her roommate, Elizabeth Johnson, remembers seeing Paula in their dorm around 2:45 p.m. According to Elizabeth, Paula had said that she was going to go on a hike, but she didn't say exactly where she was going or for how long. It was later discovered that Paula had resolved to find and walk a portion of the Long Trail, a hiking route that was located just a few miles away from the Bennington College campus. Apparently, she tried to get some other students to join her that day, but they were busy, and so she decided to venture the trail by herself, wearing a red parka, blue jeans, and topsliders. She left that day without taking any of her personal belongings with her except for a gold Elgin wristwatch with a black band. She even left behind a check from her parents that she had yet to cash. Bennington College students were required to sign out of the school if they planned to be out late and to check in with a security guard after they had returned. However, there is no record of Paula signing out in the logbook or speaking to anyone in campus security. In the area where she vanished, multiple people saw and interacted with her, so we know that Paula definitely left campus. First, there was a gas station owner named Dan Fager who saw Paula walking near a gravel pit close to the main entrance of Bennington College around 2:45 p.m. This would have been right after she had left her dorm room. Then, around 3 p.m., a truck driver named Louis Knapp reported that he had picked up a young woman hitchhiking along Route 67A near the college. He then dropped her off along Route 9, where she headed towards the Long Trail. Many people believe that this girl that he picked up was likely Paula because she would have needed some form of transportation to get to the Long Trail. Then, at approximately 4 p.m., several people saw her in an area called Bickford Hollow. One of the witnesses, Ernie Whitman, told the authorities that he actually had called out to Paula, saying that the weather was too cold for the light coat that she was wearing. However, Paula seemingly ignored his concerns and began her hike on the Long Trail. It would turn out to be the last credible sighting of the young college student. Other sightings have been reported throughout the years, but sadly, these sightings did not prove to be legitimate. When news about the missing college student began spreading, people started to report sightings of her across the East Coast. The first credible tip was from a waitress in Fall River, Massachusetts, who had served a young woman matching Paula's description. The waitress noted that the young woman seemed upset at the time, but it was unclear what exactly she was upset about. However, the woman was confirmed to not be Paula Jean Welden. Following the Fall River sighting, a train conductor claimed that he had seen a woman who looked like Paula on a train in South Carolina. But this lead also went nowhere. Honestly, some people just wanted to be a part of the story, and they provided the police with false stories. And this unfortunately happens in a lot of true crime cases, but in this case especially, these false leads and false stories really made it difficult to really key in on Paula's whereabouts. It is believed that Paula disappeared somewhere along the hiking trail, and despite no evidence, authorities at the time just chopped it up to her hike going wrong and somehow she succumbed to the elements. Despite all efforts, no trace of Paula has ever been found, not on the long trail or in any of the surrounding areas. Her father raised $5,000 for a reward, but no one attempted to claim it. Now, more than 75 years later, her case remains unsolved to this day, and theories about her disappearance range from everything, including getting lost in the woods, her being beamed up by some sort of UFO. Maybe she was murdered by a serial killer, or perhaps she ran off with a boyfriend. And there's also a lot of supernatural or paranormal explanations. And that's where the Bennington Triangle comes in, but we'll get into that later. According to one of her college roommates, Paula had recently fought with her father and she seemed a bit depressed. Is it possible that she made herself disappear? Or is it possible that her father was somehow involved? In either scenario, how is it that still to this day, there has never been any sort of remains recovered? Not a strand of hair, no bones, none of her clothing. It seems pretty suspicious. Not to mention, more people have gone missing in this Bennington Triangle area before and after Paula went missing. And so let's now dive into the Bennington Triangle phenomenon because it is about to get a whole lot weirder. Between the years 1945 and 1950, 5 people disappeared in the area surrounding Bennington, Vermont, and it has since been nicknamed the Bennington Triangle, sort of like the Bermuda Triangle. The first disappearance occurred on November 12th, 1945, when 74-year-old Mitty Rivers, who was an experienced outdoorsman, disappeared while out hunting in the vicinity of Long Trail Road and Vermont Route 9. And Rivers was on a weekend hunting trip with 4 other hunters up in the mountains. He had told his son-in-law, who was with him that day, that he'd only be going a short distance before he would rejoin their party at the camp for lunch. But he never got back to the camp. And as 3 p.m. rolled around, the rest of the hunting party began to get worried and they started searching for him. An extensive search was conducted, but the only evidence discovered was a single rifle cartridge that was found in a stream. Like I said before, Mitty Rivers was a very experienced outdoorsman, and he was also incredibly familiar with this specific area. So It is unlikely that he died of exposure. To this day, his remains or whereabouts have not been discovered, and obviously, he would no longer be alive today as he was 74 years old in 1945. It is just so bizarre that nobody knows what happened to him. And after his disappearance was Paula's disappearance in 1946. Then 3 years later, to the day, James E. Tedford went missing on December 1st, 1949. Tedford was a veteran and a resident of the Bennington Soldiers' Home, and he was last seen at a bus station, and someone brought him to this bus station, saw him get on this bus, and so we do have a witness there. And he was headed to Bennington. And according to witnesses, Tedford got on the bus and he was still aboard at the last stop before arriving in Bennington. And somewhere between the last stop and Bennington, he just vanished. All of his belongings were still in the luggage rack, and an open bus timetable was on his vacant seat. It is almost as if he dematerialized while on this bus. No one saw him get off the bus, and he was never seen or heard from again. Stranger still is our next story of Paul Jepson, and he's the youngest person who disappeared on our list. So he was only 8 years old when he vanished into thin air on October 12th, 1950. Paul was with his mother and they were in a truck, and she left her son by the truck for about an hour while she fed some pigs, and he was on his own, unattended. And when she returned, her son was nowhere in sight. Search parties were formed to look for the child, but not a single trace was ever found. And he was wearing a bright red jacket that day, sort of similar to what Paula Jean was wearing. And despite the fact that he was wearing this vibrant red jacket, no one was able to recover him. Then, just 16 days after Paul Jepson vanished, a 53-year-old woman named Frida Langer disappeared on October 28th, 1950, while at a campsite with her family. Frida and her cousin Herbert Elsner left their family campsite to go on a hike. During the journey, Frida suddenly slipped and fell into a stream, and she told Herbert that if he could wait for her, she would hike back to the campsite, change into some dry clothes, and then she would catch up to him so that they could finish their hike. But when she did not return, he decided to make his way back to the campsite to look for her. However, Frida was not at the campsite. In fact, no one had seen her since the two of them had left. And over the next 2 weeks, 5 searches were conducted involving an aircraft, helicopters, and up to 300 searchers. But no trace of Frida was found. But in a strange twist, about 7 months after she went missing, on May 12th, 1951, Frida's body was found just 3.5 miles from the campsite. This area is the eastern branch of the Deerfield River, and the area had only been lightly searched 7 months previously, but it had been searched. And no cause of death could be determined because of the condition of her remains, which does make sense. She was missing in October, and then if she did die in October and her body wasn't found until May, I would imagine that over the winter with, freezing and thawing, it would definitely cause her remains to be tampered with. No direct connections have been identified that tie these cases together, other than the general geographic area being the Bennington Triangle area and the time period in which they were found. How did her body get all the way over 3 miles away from the campsite. To this day, nobody knows. And what is so bizarre about her disappearance is that hers is the only one where we do find a body at the end of the story. The other 4 people who went missing, their remains were never found. And we don't know if they died. We don't know if they were abducted. We just don't know. And what's strange about Frida's case is that her body was found, but it was found over 3 miles away from where their family was camping. I find it very unlikely that she managed to get incredibly lost, especially when they were on these hiking trails. And, to get back to their campsite, all she would have to do is turn around and walk back. I can't imagine she would somehow get lost, miles away in a completely different direction, all the way to the eastern branch of the Deerfield River. And it also begs the question, when they did search this area, how is it that her remains weren't found? Could it be that someone placed her remains there? To this day, nobody knows. So, what exactly is going on in the Bennington Triangle? There are a lot of theories, and there is a lot of history with this area, especially with the Native American people or indigenous people that had once lived there and had claim to the land. And many people believe that this area is cursed and the land has some kind of supernatural hold on it. Some people even believe that there's like this Bigfoot-like creature called the Bennington Monster who is actually roaming the area and stalking humans and then taking them to a secret lair. However, I feel like by this point, we probably would have seen this monster by now. And the area, like I said, it's said to be cursed according to Native American lore. But on top of that sort of like paranormal and supernatural activity, there's also been a lot of UFO activity that was reported by people who were spending time in the Bennington Triangle. And so, with so many unknowns and so many different stories, it's very hard to narrow what exactly is going on in this area. It could be one of these options, or maybe it's a collective. But with all that being said, I hope that you enjoyed learning about the Bennington Triangle phenomenon, as well as learning about Paula Jean Welden and her bizarre disappearance, as well as the other strange disappearances in this area. What are your thoughts about the Bennington Triangle or any of the topics discussed today? Please let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Thank you so much for joining me. It's goodbye for now, but I hope to haunt you again soon.